At the point of recording this video, I've been teaching guitar for about 12 years exclusively, nothing but teaching guitar, and during that time I've seen a few kind of common student pitfalls, and it doesn't matter if you're learning to play rock, jazz, classical, beginner, intermediate. These are perhaps the most common banana skins that I see many different types of students kind of stumble on, and it's never technical things, it's usually kind of mental perspectives which I hope to share and help you with in this video. Just before we begin the video, I'd like to tell you about a free beginner jazz guitar course which I have available for anyone that is new to learning jazz guitar. I've put this jazz guitar course together to break down jazz guitar in a coherent and structured way. There are over 25 4K video lessons and a 40-page downloadable PDF to help you get started. Each module comes with downloadable PDFs, chord diagrams, etudes and studies to help you get started learning the wonderful art of jazz. The first issue that I see many students come across is that of memorization. This tends to be in two opposite directions. One in which either the student has not memorized the piece at all and thinks that they can get away without using the sheet music, and the other in which they're fully glued to the sheet music and they never memorize anything. So obviously the kind of what you want to do there is try and be somewhere in between. So the first student is the one that basically thinks that they memorized it but haven't. They'll keep doing 2 bars and stumbling, starting again. They'll be playing the chords and they're forgetting them, starting again. If it's like that, then sometimes that can be nerves, which is okay, that's absolutely fine. But more often than not, it just means that you haven't internalized the chords properly and memorized them properly. And of course, there are ways to do that, ways to memorize things or memorize a melody more efficiently. That could be it. But regardless of how you memorize it, it doesn't matter even if you're just kind of memorizing it as a beginner guitar player. Then you need to have at least a certain amount of time where your eyes are looked at the music or you're working out from the recording before you move on to playing it from memorization. It takes a lot. Even people that are fast learners, they can easily forget 1 or 2 bars. So it's moving on from the music or the recording that you've worked something out from too quick. The other type of memorization issue is when basically people are kind of glued to the music. So it could be someone that says, oh, I know 5 different jazz standards. Oh, let me just get the chords for this one and I'll do that. And you're thinking, okay, I thought you said that you knew that song. So that can sometimes happen. And what I've seen there, the common one for jazz students is that they'll be sending me like a video or they'll be performing in class and they'll use like a play-along program like REO Pro, which everyone uses these days. And when they're improvising, you'll see that their eyes will be glued like this on the smartphone and they'll be kind of, looking a little bit focused on that rather than what they're playing. They're not performing, they're just looking at chords, and it just means that when all the songs are like that, then that's a bad thing. Obviously, that skill of being able to kind of play while you're looking at music is fine, but if it's every single song you play, you're always thinking I need the chords for all of them, then that's, you want to try and move away from that. So that's the first issue, memorization. One student in which they think that they know the music and they clearly don't, they need to at least have the music for reference there, at least for a certain period of time. I saw Pat Martino play live and he had lead sheets and stuff, so I'm not saying that you want to kind of be glued to a lead sheet for every song, but you really need to be confident that you're not going to make any mistakes if you're moving away from it. And the second one is for people that are too memorized, that they're too attached to the music, and every single song that they play they need the music for, and it becomes a problem when it disengages them from the performance. So that's the first issue. The second issue is probably the biggest one, and I see this all the time, and that is too much information, which often leads to fast burnout. So this type of student is basically trying to consume everything. They go on YouTube and they try and take in every single lesson. They think that they need to learn, these chords, those chords, these songs, these scales, all at once, all at the same time. And of course, when people try and do that, then they basically kind of try and absorb everything, but pretty much learn nothing. So that's kind of one thing that you need to be very wary of, especially like here on YouTube. That's a really kind of nasty tactic, really. So there's ways you can get around that as well. I mean, if you're taking lessons with a teacher, and just do what they're asking you to do, especially if they're an experienced teacher that's got good results over many years with students, that's helped them through many exams and many performances and helped them grow. They know what they're doing, you know, they've been in it a long time, so you've got to listen to what they're saying to really get the most. Why else would you be paying for a lesson if you're not going to listen? It seems obvious, but you know, some people think that they know better than a guitar teacher. So that's one thing. But even here on YouTube, if you're self-learning, that's okay. But you know, you only really need to kind of be working on one or two things at once. You know, so if you're on YouTube, it's better to really kind of be more direct on what you want to do. So if you've got subscriptions, or if you kind of search YouTube for lessons or whatever, just maybe work on one or two of those for a week. You can have a pile to work on, but don't try and consume everything all at once, I think. And even then, you might even be better off kind of, you know, stopping off YouTube full stop and stopping off the internet, or just going on it with intent rather than just kind of browsing the ocean of lessons. Now, the odd shiny thing, the shiny new toy, can be okay as well, as long as it's not every day and every week. So if you're working on, I usually give my students 2 to 3 assignments for a 1 to 2 week period. But if you're kind of, you know, if something comes up like, oh, you see, when I'm especially teaching young children or young students, it tends to be that they'll see something like on TikTok or a YouTube Shorts, and it'll be like a really kind of cool thing, like a cool riff or a cool chord that they can get there and then, and that's cool as well, you know. So, as long as it's not kind of all the time and you've got kind of, you know, a stack of things that don't mean anything. But sometimes the kind of shorter content things where people can just kind of get something in 30 seconds, I think works really well. I had a student fairly recently, and it was I think it was like the top 5 guitar riffs of all time in 60 seconds, and he learned all of them. And I'm like, that's cool, you know, that's just something that you might not be introduced to otherwise. So the odd shiny new thing is okay, but you need to have kind of clear long-term goals about your direction as a player overall, to kind of be an overall you know, substantial musician, and not just someone that's kind of playing bits of this, bits of that. The long-term goals are what's going to really kind of see your progress over time. The next biggest issue that I see is a lack of fretboard knowledge, and this is really dependent upon what level you're at. So, you know, if I kind of explain this from perhaps a few different perspectives. So lack of fretboard knowledge. If you're a pretty new guitar player, what I have seen when I've been teaching new guitar players is people that can't even be bothered to learn the letters of the strings. So obviously that makes it very hard to teach them. You need to know the letters of the strings. You need to at least try and get familiar with the note names on the bottom 2 strings so you can navigate chords in all 12 keys. That's pretty rudimentary stuff, really. But perhaps the biggest pitfall that I see amongst guitar players that have been playing it a couple of years is when you're teaching them and you're showing them a chord or a lick or a scale or something like that, and you're still on this way of teaching where you're saying, oh, it's, you know, fret 7 of the B string going to fret 8 of the B string. That kind of thing is something that, especially if you're kind of a serious, like, you know, you're wanting to learn jazz or you're intermediate generally to an advanced player, you want to move away from that kind of way of learning pretty quick. You know, it's okay if you're beginning guitar and you're just kind of getting used to things, that's okay. But really it comes to a certain point where you want to be kind of consuming things either by listening to them and working them out, or being able to follow somebody saying, oh, it goes to the 3rd, the 5th, or it's a fragment of such and such a scale, and oh, the spelling of this chord is root 5/3, etc. That kind of thing is what you want to really try and aspire to, because it makes it very hard to teach someone if they're just on fret 7 of B string, fret 8, and they're a couple of years into their playing. It's, you know, how are you really going to kind of ever get confident with jazz if you don't really understand the fingerboard knowledge, you know? So that's a really kind of important thing to try and kind of combat. And of course, one of the best ways to combat that is by doing a little bit of reading music. You don't have to be you know, a session player level of reading, but just reading a little bit of music will really improve your awareness of keys and the fretboard. And I do have a full video which explains how to do that and make it more interesting and relevant to guitar players if you're completely new to reading music. I would say that there are 3 elements to basically learning. Learn, practice, play. Learn, practice, play. And what I found as a teacher over the years is that practice and play are the most neglected. Especially practice, actually. I think that learning, people somewhat enjoy learning more than the others, and they're constantly wanting to kind of learn new things and thinking that by learning more it's going to move them on, but it's really not the case actually. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't learn new things, but what the problem I found is that students are constantly, when they've got something new coming in, something that they learnt a week or two is kind of going out. So if you're learning jazz, for example, you've learnt one tune and you've learnt the next song, but by the time you finish learning the next song, the first song has gone because you haven't practiced or played it, which is why it's so important to do those latter two steps. You've got to spend time really kind of going over things that you know as you accumulate more. And what you find is the more you practice these things, overall, in the long-term goal, you don't have to practice them, like every single day once you've practiced them for a while, because if you just practice them intently and you practice kind of retrieval memory techniques, which I've talked about in another video, then that's how jazz musicians kind of build up their repertoire of knowing so many songs. It's not because we go through every single song we know every day or every single scale. It's because we've kind of practiced those a lot, and we've practiced retrieving them after not playing them for a while, and we've practiced things in the right way. So, too much of a bigger thing to go into right now, but I have got other videos on the topic. So learn, practice, play. Don't spend all your time learning. Spend a lot of it practicing things that you do know and playing, so that you feel a sense of progress as you move on as a guitar player. So those are the most common mistakes which I've found in my experience as a teacher. I hope that they help you out. What are some of the challenges that you face when learning? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.